Hi, this is Pastor Kevin on freedom and governance. You've heard me probably say on other podcasts how important it is to obey and follow the government. And while that's true, because God's word does speak to that, there are a couple of factors we need to understand that I think are important in regards to freedom and the governance of our country. The first thing we need to remember always, first of all, we need to obey God, first of all, in every circumstance, no matter what the government says. And we'll get to what the government and following them in just a moment. But we must remember that what God commands is higher law and authority than that of man. And it's important for us to make sure that we follow what God's and his word says. So that's why it's important for us to study the Bible, to know what it says, so we can follow God, and because we want to obey him because we love him. It's not a matter of to be saved because our works don't save us, but we want to obey God because we love him, because of what he has done for us. So we always obey God first above any man or any other person. So the next part then is, when it comes to freedom and governance, then how are we to follow the government? Because yes, that's the next part, is we are to obey the government, but when can we not obey the government? Well, as I said just a moment ago, it's always following God first and what he says in his word first. If what the government says is contrary to God, then we obey God first. Now, that doesn't mean we need to have a bad attitude or wrong attitude in how we approach this. We still are to respect those governing authorities over our country, over us. By the way, it's not, the point of the government is to govern, not to rule over us. So our premier, our prime minister, or if you're in the States, the president and your governors, they are not people who are to rule us, but they're governing us. It's people that we've put into that place of power as a means to help for our country or our province, or in the States, your state, as a means to help and take care of the people of the country, province, or state. So it is important for us to obey our government, but when it's contrary to God's word, to God and his law, then we obey God first. Now, isn't there another reason why we can disobey the government? Well, we have to be very careful with that. Now, in Canada, like the States, we have a constitution, and our constitutions are a little bit different between two countries, but there's a lot that is similar too. For instance, in Canada, we have the freedom of assembly. We also have the freedom of religion. We have the freedom of conscience. And so those are the basic rights, some of them that we have in Canada. If you don't know what the Constitution says, I invite you to go online and find the Constitution. It's very easy to find. You can do a search for it and read it. It's a very short read, but it's important for us as people, Christians and non-Christians alike, to know what our Constitution says, because it's important to hold our government accountable too. Now, individually, we don't have the right and authority over our government. Our government does have authority over us, but again, it's supposed to be authority and not power. Again, the point of our government is to govern. It's to care for for the people of the country. It's not to rule the people. It's not for their benefit, but for the benefit of the whole country. So we are to obey our government, but when the government makes laws that are contrary to the Constitution, it's important for us as the people of the country to write to our MPs, our MLAs, our premier, our prime minister, and say, hey, you know what? This isn't correct. This law contravenes the Constitution. And the Constitution is part of the founding of our nation as a means to keep our government accountable. In other words, they're not supposed to make any laws that are contrary to the Constitution. That's the whole point of the Senate. If the Senate does their job properly, when Parliament makes a law, the Senate looks at it and looks at, is this constitutional or not? And if not, it's supposed to be thrown out. Or send it back to Parliament and saying, these parts are unconstitutional, you need to revise it so it fits the Constitution. So when the law is contrary to the Constitution, we as the people should be going to our government and saying to them, this is unconstitutional, this is against our rights as people of our country. That needs to change. Simple way to deal with that, though, if the government doesn't follow, is what you do next election: vote them out. Very simple, isn't it? It's important, though, to understand what our actual rights are. There are some who have what's called perceived rights, rights that people think they have, but actually aren't rights at all. And then there are actual rights. Again, that's why I say it's important to know the Constitution and understand the Constitution. Go to it, understand it. And it comes to law enforcement too. We respect them because they're supposed to fulfill the law, enforce the law, but they need to know what the law is too, so they know how they can do their job so they don't infringe upon the rights that we have as a nation. So we can do what's called civil disobedience, which is actually included in the Canadian Constitution. We can be civilly disobedient if the law is contrary to the Constitution, because again, the Constitution is the bedrock of our country. Now, I'm not saying we need to have a rebellious attitude or wrong attitude against our MLAs or MPs, Premier and Prime Minister. Not at all. As Christians, we are to uplift our government leaders and pray for them. We're to encourage them as well. I encourage everyone to write letters frequently to our MPs and MLAs, Premier and Prime Minister, and not always to be letters of saying what you're upset about, but give words of encouragement as well. It's important to support our government. Even if we don't like who's in power, sorry, let me rephrase that. Even if we don't like the person or the party that is leading the country at the time, it is still our duty as Christians to uplift them and support them and encourage them. Applaud them when they make great decisions. Yes, call them to task when it's wrong, especially when it's against the Constitution or the moral law that God has given us. But we are to support our government. That's why I encourage us as Christians. As God says in his word in 1 Timothy chapter 2, we're to pray for our government, to encourage them. So I encourage you, even now, write a letter. Write one, first of all, to be an encouragement. I know for myself, I'm planning on doing that sometime soon about a couple of issues, but I want to use what I call the sandwich method. It's not my own coming. It's what I learned from going to Toastmasters. And they have a really simple philosophy when it comes to giving feedback. Share something that is good about what's going on, then give the point of improvement, and then something that you like as well. That's the way it keeps it positive, and it's more of an uplifting, encouraging thing. After all, we as Christians are called to be encouragers, not people who tear down. We're to build up our government, not tear them down. To be a support, not to work against them. So, can we have civil disobedience if it's according to the Constitution? Absolutely. But make sure you have the right heart attitude towards your government still. This is one I admit fully that I have to work at continually, because there's times I get frustrated with our government and my family hears it the most. But it's important for us to uplift our government. And we need to do that first of all in prayer, but also in deed too. So yes, civil disobedience according to the Constitution, if it's a law contrary to the Constitution, and also if it's contrary to what God in his word tells us. Otherwise, we need to follow the government, practice our freedom, because after all, again, that Constitution is the law that we have been given for the land of our country to protect us as the people of Canada. This is Pastor Kevin on freedom and government.